Welcome to this video for the course Game Programming. My name is Paul and today I'm going to look into a very important control structure in C# or indeed any programming language, which is the loop. In a loop, a series of instructions will get repeated or iterated, so it will be done many times. And an example of this is the game loop, which you have seen undoubtedly. And this looks like while the game is running, update all the game objects, render the game on display, and this is being repeated over and over again while the game is running. And indeed, the instruction here contains a loop itself, because if there are more objects, all of these objects will be updated, and that's a loop also. The example I'm going to start with is called the collab sequence. It's just printing a sequence of numbers. There's a starting number, like here 26, and I get the next number by doing one of two things. If the number is even, I'll divide by 2, so I get 13. And if it's odd, I will multiply by 3 and add 1. So this sequence emerges like from 40 we go to 20, 10, 5, and then down to 1. And after that, it's not interesting anymore because we will just be repeating 4 to 1, 4 to 1, etc. So we want the loop to stop when we reach the number 1. So to do this, I've prepared some code. I've made a solution in Visual Studio with a project called Loop Examples. The class is also Loop Examples because that's what we're doing. And there's a main method which creates an object and calls a method do the loop, and here we can put the thing we are going to repeat. And of course there's a console.readline at the bottom because we are still making a console application, and we don't want the window to disappear when the program finishes. So for our first example, I've prepared some code, so I'm just going to paste it in here. So I've created a method collabs, and as a parameter I will give the starting number, and also there's a little print statement so you can see in the output what the starting number was. So now we are going to create a while loop, which has the keyword while, obviously. And we decided that we would stop the sequence when the number reached 1. And since we are not putting here when to stop, but when to go on, we will go on while the number is greater than 1. So when this is in, I can put in the brackets. And now I have to do one of two things, either multiply by 2 or divide by 2 or multiply by 3. So I have to put an if statement. And to see if the number n is odd or even, I'll divide with remainder by 2. And if the remainder is 0, then the number is odd. And if it's 1, so not 0, it will be odd, and 0 will be even. So in this case, I'll divide by 2. In the else case, I'll have to multiply by 3 and add 1. And when that's done, inside the loop, I want to print the number that's being calculated now. So I'll create a write line, and I'll put in a little message and print the number n. So this looks quite all right. Of course, I still have to do one thing. This method is here now, but it never gets called, so I have to put in a call here. And to start with, I'm going to try the number that was just in the example. So let's see if this works. And here you see the output. It's the same sequence we saw earlier on, and it seems to be working perfectly. So of course I can do some other examples. For instance, I might try what happens when I start with 1. Now you see just the first line is printed, and there's never a next, and this means that all of this never gets executed. It stops immediately. So you can have a loop and the instructions inside it may never be executed. Of course I can try another number like 1311, and now you see we really get a big list. And this is also clear to show that the number of times the instructions are repeated is not determined. You don't know beforehand how many times it will be done. It depends on the condition. And this is also maybe a source of problems, because this means you can create conditions that will go on forever. And I will just make a very simple one here and see what happens. So if I put in here 2 greater than 1, well, we can go on in this loop indefinitely, but it will always stay true. So it will keep going on. So let's see what happens. And you see it's just going on, and we could watch this forever and it will never stop. And you can guess that this is one of the main problems for programs that seem to hang. They are just stuck in a loop that never ends. And so you'll have to watch your conditions carefully here. Of course, this one is clear, but if you have a condition with lots of ands or variables, it may not be so easy to see what's going on. And in the next example, we are going to look at a condition that is more complex than a simple 2 greater than 1 here, and I'll change this back to the right code to make it correct again. In the second example, we are going to look at a simple login procedure, or actually just the checking of the password in that procedure. So this involves a loop, because when you mistype your password, you can try again, mistype again, and you can try once more. Of course, the number is limited because generally you don't have more than 3 attempts. So the condition in this loop is somewhat more complicated. It will have to look if the password is typed correctly, and it will have to count the number of attempts. So again, I've prepared some code. Here it is. And there's just the lines that are printed in this procedure. So when we start, there's a welcome message, and this part may get repeated. So please enter your password. It will be shown many times if you type your password incorrectly. And of course, there's one which is just at the end. So I'm going to add some code here. And first of all, we need to know what the password is. So I'm going to put in a string password is geheim, which, in case you don't know, is Dutch for secret. And then when we've got this password, we can start the loop. And of course, the message welcome to game programming is first. So our loop for checking the password will start after that. And let's put in some extra white space. And it involves a while loop. So I have it here, but I don't know what the condition is yet. So I can only check if the password is correct after there's something being typed here, but I have to have a variable to have as a condition in my loop. So I'm going to add an extra variable, which is a bool, and I will call it password OK, and it's false at the start. And here I will put not password OK. So what happens now is when we start this method and we get to this while loop, it will start because password OK is false, so this is true, and we can start our loop of typing the password and checking it. And so here's the brackets for the loop, and I'll just move these lines here. So, and then we can put in, of course we'll have to ask for input, and the way to do that is console.readline and this will yield a string, the string that the user has typed, so we have to store it somewhere, and I'm just calling it input. So now we have the input of the user, we have the password, and we have to check if these are equal. So, and I'll want the result not in an if statement, but I want the result to go into this variable. And I can do that simply by typing so the second part of this line checks if the password equals the input, and the result, true or false, will be stored in this variable. So if the password is okay, we might skip this line and go on to a successful login, and we can leave the loop. But if the password is incorrect, we'll have to say something about it, like this line. But we can put it here, but that's not really nice, because if the password is correct, we want to skip to the last line immediately. But you cannot do that in a while loop. You have to execute all the lines in it. Well, there is a break statement to get out of the loop, but it creates a little bit messy code, so we're not going to do that. And instead, I'll just use an if to make sure that this write line password incorrect is only printed when the password is indeed incorrect. So I'm putting in if not password OK. And then I'll just cut this line from here and paste it inside. So here we have a first version which just does the password checking, and we're going to test that before we are going to build in the number of tries. So to make it happen, I still have to put the check password here. And now we can have try. Please enter your password. I'll type Blaad. Incorrect. Geheim. Login successful. So let's try again and be a little less correct. So I'll just type B1234. You see, in fact, if the user manages to type the password incorrectly every time, we're in an infinite loop. But so I cannot end the program by pressing enter, so I have to kill it. Or I might have typed geheim again. So you see that getting into an infinite loop is easier than you might think. So next step is we're going to build in the number of maximum for the attempts. And I will use two variables to do that. First of all, I'm creating an int to hold the maximum number of attempts. Just use the shorter tries for ease. So I have a max tries. Next, I will have to create a variable that holds the number of tries I've had. So I'll create int tries, and it starts at 0. So this we can now count our tries. So every time we try it, we'll increase the counter. And we'll build in a test to make sure we don't go over our 3 attempts. So I'll have to use an AND because both situations, password number of tries below the maximum and also password not okay are both needed to go on. So I'll type tries smaller than max tries. Oh. There was some not so helpful help from Visual Studio. So now we've got a check for the number of attempts in 3 statements. We've created a counter. We are increasing the counter with every attempt, and we have built in a condition to stop after 3 the maximum number of tries. So we can try if this works. First of all, I'll do it correctly. Let's see if I try geheim now. It's successful. So now what happens if we are not so good at typing passwords? And it says password incorrect, 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 and then login successful, which is not what we wanted. And to be precise, this program is buggy. And the reason is that since the condition of this loop has now 2 components, there are now also 2 possibilities for exiting the loop. You may have typed the correct password, but it's also possible that you just used up all your attempts without giving the correct password. And our program doesn't take that into account because it just says login successful. So we'll have to check here which one of the 2 is the case. So luckily we can easily see if which one is the case because we have this variable password okay. And I'll just put in an if statement. And if password is okay, we can write login successful. And else well, I'll have to go down a little bit. We'll type dot write line. Well, what shall we do? We could say something like please go away. And we'll add a semicolon at the end. So let's try if this works better. And I'll just try the 3 wrong attempts now. And it says please go away, so this looks better. Before we finish off this video, I want to discuss one little thing more and that's about the placement of these variables. For instance, most programs, systems have, apart from a login procedure, a procedure to change your password. And this would involve a second method like set password to change this value, which is now impossible because the password is inside the method. So there's good reason to take this out here and put it as a member of the class right here. Now another method may access it. And so something you could try is, should this also be true for one of the other variables? For instance, can we move this one out and put it here? And of course, it's not relevant if you log in only once, but if you log out, log in again, so you essentially get something like this. That might influence each other. And this is an interesting thing to try, so I would advise you to take this code and try out what happens if you start moving some of the variables here near the declaration of geheim. And this concludes this first video of on loops. There's another one which discusses the for loop. Thank you for watching.